Right, there's no mic coming through. All right. Inna alhamdulillah wa kafah. والصلاة والسلام على رسوله المصطفى وعلى عباده الذين ارتضى ومن بهداهم اهتدى وبآثار أهل المدينة اقتفى وبعد فسلام الله على القوم أهلا وسهلا بكم ومرحبا people欢迎来自 bienvenidos a todos بخير راغلي خوش آمدید my majani and swagatam people. I've got to first of all the amazing Layla Khan, Baba Jan, wants to say hi. Assalamu alaikum, folks.
Assalamu alaikum.
How are you doing, Majan? Are you good
I'm
to?
doing good.
All right, that's awesome.
No
That's
voice.
awesome.
Someone says no voice.
There should be now voice. I think that was in the beginning. I'm going to.
Adios means bye.
All right, so let me just bring up people on YouTube as well. The convos had disappeared for a while. There, that's back.
Good job, Dad.
All right, folks. Now, the amazing. Okay, this is gonna. All these things are gonna fall. There's my coffee behind there. There's all. This is like chaos. This is where you bring chaos into the world, and it just reigns supreme. All right, Majan. Okay, Zozo Khan, Babaki Jan.
Hi.
Say assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
All right, look how innocent she is on these live streams.
Should open a YouTube channel for kids.
That's an interesting suggestion. So
How
look
about
at that. All right, so has liked the stream, so we get these notifications each time. I'm not so sure about the
This is where you get views from us.
people. Click like, click share. We're going to
Hi,
begin. Is
sweet
that
Layla. Hi.
okay now? Sonika Vakt?
Guys, my dad looks like...
Okay, I don't know, like the way the direction of that thing. It's time. Zozo, this is how Zozo addresses me. All right, bro. We better do this, bro. Yeah. Okay, bro. You need to go to sleep, bro. अच्छा अच्छा बस अब दरवाजा बंद ठीक है आप जाओ बच के जाओ okay उसको छोड़ दो. Right, so off you go. Right, so people, what's going on, mi gente? All right, I think I've got an awesome new way of bringing in all the Facebook comments now. Doing it, people. I like it. Somebody said, "Sta in my breath." I don't know what is that. What's my younger one's name? Zozo is Zara Khan. Right, Mufti, speak some Pakhto. All right, aukana nemana. Jore maze ki. All right. So, what is going down, people? You know what? Let me see if I can do something about. As you can see, I've added a feature that you guys can see some kind of every time somebody likes, follows, shares. There's an alert box that will come up. This is all obviously new to me, as you can imagine. Let me just see. The alert box is awesome, but I just want to make sure that, you see, I'm not so sure about its, let's go into its settings, see if I can do anything about this. Can I do anything about its sound? Global alert, source, general settings. Definitely there was something here about it. How does it work again? See, this is the problem when you're not when you're not a gadget kind of general settings. What about the general properties, sources? Because it's so. Every time it's happening, there was a way, and I was just thinking, where did it go? I saw it when I was adding it, that about the sound. Use custom rate, global alert delay. Shares, follows, merge, global settings. God. You know what I need? I need like an expert on this stuff to kind of just say, well, this is how you do it, Mufti. And that would be awesome. Right, do I get unlimited source background? Nope. I don't know, it's not happening for me. Goddamn. Anyway, so let's just go with it. I hope it's not too... If it gets too much, I can always mute it out, but let's see, people, let's see. So, what is going on? First and foremost, let me begin, as always, by telling you all to spread the love, spread the fitan and fasad. Get it out there, folks. And where is the shairi to begin with? That's what I'm talking about, people. That's what I'm talking about. Allah. Allah, my favorite.
बेजार हो गई हो बहुत जिंदगी से तुम बेजार हो गई हो तो बेजार ही रहो ये भी एक टेक्निक है साहब जिंदगी की मैं इब्तिदाइश से बेमेहर ही रहा तुम इंतहाइश का मेयार ही रहो क्या कहने तुम खून थूकती हो ये सुनकर खुशी हुई वाह तुम खून थूकती हो ये सुनकर खुशी हुई इस रंग इस अदा में भी पुरकार ही रहो मैंने ये कब कहा था मोहब्बत में है नजात मैंने ये कब कहा था कि मोहब्बत में है नजात मैंने ये कब कहा था वफादारी रहो
वाह people, that is just so amazing. ये क्या हो रहा है? What is going on here? Why is my widget box? There it is. Now that's better. Alright, so people, what is going down? What is preoccupying the precious thoughts of mi gente? Somebody had sent a super chat. Alright, Ishaq Mullah, you're doing it. Ishaq jumps right in with a question. See, I haven't even shared my own podcast, but he's straight in there. See, this is the concern of the ummah. I like it. So, you've got the question. Let me just share this let people just at least think, well, mashallah. The conspiracy theorists are going to say, why is Mufti not sharing his own? He's not even sharing his own stuff. I mean, this is like, why does he expect us to share it? So, a question straight away. What do we think of jihad al-talab? People, jihad al-talab. So this is the offensive jihad. What do we think of it? So, let me just... And folks, Allah. Now, jihad, you see, it's such a shame that jihad has become such a, like... Alright, Mufti Abu Layth has shared your stream. You're doing it, zombie. You're doing it. That's the zombie supporting our cause, people. So, alright, look at that. So, people, jihad, what a question. Let's get right into it, man. Now, jihad is actually a very positive term in Allah. Much love to those of you sending the stars and the super chat, dearly appreciated. Right, so it's actually a positive term in Islam. But it seems to have been unfortunately hijacked. And that's, especially in recent times, it's being presented as something so negative, something so, something so terrorizing. And it isn't actually like that. That's not what it's about. I've got to do something with that. The sound effects on it. But wait a minute. Do you think it's Allah, people? Did you think I wasn't gonna? Look at that. I got it, people. All right. I figured it out. Yes, salam. You know, sometimes I impress myself. Huh? I thought I figured it out. It's still... What? This one? Not nice, my friend. After all of that, it's still... Still it does it. Yes, salam. I thought I clocked it. I was like, Yeah, let's focus on the question. Now... Right, so... You've got... jihad, which is really a military aspect to any civilization. You know, it's wrong to assume that in Islam there's, first of all, it's wrong to assume that Islam is a pacifistic faith. It's not. Okay. So Islam is just like any civilization. It has a military aspect to it. But if you examine the life of the Prophet ﷺ, all of the battles in which he engaged, right, all of the battles on which he engaged were defensive. They were not, they were not where the Prophet ever went out attacking people. Right, so that's a good point, actually. Somebody gave me some tips. That's a good point. Could try that. So, you'll never find that the Prophet went out... Nope, that didn't work. Right. So, you'll never find that the Prophet went out attacking. अब इस चाचे को खामोश कैसे करें? Unless I just, you know what I could do? What about this? If I just... Yeah. What about if I bring it down to there? Alright, I think I did it. Yes, salam, I did it. So if we look at the life of the Prophet ﷺ, we will not find that he was trying to conquer the world. He wasn't trying to say, well, let's attack such and such. I know, here's a vulnerable thing, let's attack them. He wasn't doing any of that. That is pretty much that is very evident. All of the battles of the Prophet's life were either very clearly defensive jihad, or in some cases like Ghazwat al-Tabuk, there was a preemptive strike, in the sense that not a strike, a movement, because the Prophet saw that these, from the Byzantines and from those lands, these people were moving down from Sham. And when armies move down, it's very clear what they're about to do. So, yeah, so from the Prophet's life, it is quite clear that jihad was it was a military aspect, but it was all defensive in the Prophet's lifetime. I'm not saying that there was no, that it's impermissible to do offensive jihad. But it was not what the Prophet was doing. He wasn't trying to conquer the world. And that's very clear. And Islam is not about that. So that's why the Quran is very clear that, look, it addresses people as, look, there are civilizations, there are Muslims, there are non-Muslims. It wasn't trying to say everybody's going to be a Muslim on earth. Like some people today feel that everybody has to be a Muslim. That never seems to have been the case with the Seerah. Cool. All right, reactionary, you're doing it. Much love with the super chat. So, yeah, I mean, that's something very clear. Is jihad al-talab from the Umayyads? I mean, I would say it's there from the Sahaba. It's very clear. I'm not stating this is un-Islamic. Don't get me wrong with that. I'm not saying this is a wrong, like as in it's condemned in Islam, offensive jihad. But it's like the politics then of any state, of any civilization, of any empire. At times people will see welfare in war and they will go to war. But that's what it is. It's reduced to the kind of strategic insight of whoever is ruling. It's not necessarily against Islam, but it's not what Islam was about either. Islam was not about kind of conducting military warfare. So yeah, I hope that shed some light. Cool, people. All right. Let me just go through some of these questions, people. All right, so Mufti, I want to ask you, what is the most authentic seerah of the Prophet ﷺ? It's an interesting question. I mean, it's difficult to say what is the most authentic. I think sometimes some of the seerahs that are written in English are very good. I've had a few people recommend actually on my Mind Traps. There was Martin Ling's is actually highly recommended. There was another one, a prophet, a believer. I've forgotten the name of it. It's actually a very simple title. It's come recommended by several people, and it seems to be a very balanced biography of the Prophet's life, and not too complicated either. It slipped my mind what the title is, but it's something that I've had a few people recommend on my show. Cool. Not seal of the nectar. Rahiq al-Makhtum. Those, you see, the problem with those kind of they just really I don't, they base the thing on Ibn Ishaq and Ibn Hisham and all these military aspect of the Prophet, and I don't think they do a good job at all, if I be honest. Upon Kiraye. Alright, so what is going on, people? Mufti, what do you think of Bro Haji's Barbahari Gate? I haven't watched his Barbahari Gate. I think I really like Bro Haji. If that's, first of all, what I thought you said, what do you think of Bro Haji? I really like him. I'm not up to speed with what his current thing is. I have watched snippets. I like his humor. He's definitely got a kind of a charm to him. So the topics are usually to do with Salafis, and they used to once upon a time be about Shia quite a bit, and I wasn't too much into that. The Salafi thing is interesting because there's this whole thing of, do you need to always follow the rulers, or can you rebel against them? Is insurgency permissible? And my understanding is that Bro Haji has shown that, well, actually, insurgency it's just a strategy. I mean, if a people felt that it was the time to revolt and a revolution was overdue, they could do that, and Islam doesn't prevent that. Whereas the Salafis are obviously clearly against that. So he's been exposing them for their inaccuracies. His recent one was on what's his name? Abu Khadija. Which, if I can find that, where did it go? Was it this one?
Huh? I am Salafi.
I am Salafi.
And I don't care what anyone says. I'm Salafi. Every one of you is not Salafi.
That's and I will. I have asked Bro Haji to come on the Mind Trap. I think it'd be awesome to get him on. I really gel well with him as a person. I think I've met him now on at least a couple of occasions, and on a personality basis, I really like him, and we get on. So even though I'm sure he probably doesn't agree with my views and things, but that's fine. People don't need to agree with my views. Darkest, you're doing it, man. Is that you, though? Salams, you mentioned, let's go to his super chat. Adam Ahmed said, past his bedtime, more like. I'm not sure, past whose bedtime? Alright, you see, I've done this. This is really good now. I've got it, so I've got the Facebook chat as well. And it's right in front of me. I can go up and down as well now on Facebook chat, which I couldn't do previously. Rather. Alright. People, you're doing it, Azaratis. Darka says, you mentioned in a previous video, Qadiani, that God does not change the nature laws and intervene. Is the Quran or Wahi not an intervention? Right. What I've said is that God may intervene, but not in the way that you think. So, and I've given the example of the Copenhagen interpretation in quantum physics. So the way you have that God, that if it's being observed, it disappears. The quantum world collapses if being observed. And I feel that in a similar way, God does intervene, but not upon observation. So, yeah, and these things are very difficult and tricky, but that's the closest to understanding things. I also feel quantum physics is the best way, the closest we've got to understanding fate and destiny. Seriously, the quantum eraser is just amazing. Check it out on YouTube, people. The quantum eraser experiment. It is the closest we have. All right. So let me just bring that back up, peoples. What is going on? So, right. Yaar, we haven't done poetry. Kya yaar? Kya kamal hai yaar? I've got an Urdu poem for you guys. Vah. Oh, before we go into this, I'd like to say, those of you that are familiar with Sheikh Sajjad, he's from Birmingham. He's involved with many projects actually throughout the country. Very well known, very respectable, highly respected amongst the Islamic circles. He's also runs his institute Sacred Texts and teaches, and has been involved in many grassroots projects that he does not take the credit for on social media. He's also a relative of mine. I don't know, some of you may or may not know that, but yeah, we're related. And in addition to being related, his maternal granddad was actually was like a best mate with my maternal granddad. So it was very there's that link. And so yeah, I'd like to, those of you that know, his grandfather, now speaking about his paternal grandfather, has passed away just recently, within this week. It's been just a week now, or under a week. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant him an elevated maqam in Jannatul Firdaus, and may Allah grant Sheikh Sajjad's family ease, and him ease. He was very close to his grandfather and had a, almost like a father-child relationship with him, spent many years with him and grew up with him. to a great extent. So my condolences, and those of you that do know him, just so you're aware as well, in case you've maybe have been trying to reach out to him and he's been preoccupied. But cool, I just thought I'd share that as well. Right, now... Oh, this... Yaar, wah, kamal. You know, I've also got a review for you guys today. A perfume review, people. We're going to come to that later on. I found some daddy perfumes, people. Wah! Some record breakers. That's... Right, Muhammad Abdul Basit, you're doing it. People, what is life without poetry, huh? In the hadith, inna min ash-shi'ri la hikmah, is wisdom that is from poetry. This one's in Urdu, going out to all our Urdu beloveds, all those who love poetry. Koi tumse pooche kaun hu main? Allah, Allah, Allah. If somebody has to ask, who is this guy? Abhi ye story mein ye kya kar raha hai? If he's saying that if somebody asks they ask you who is this person to you, then just say that, you know, nobody too special. Allah, Allah, Allah. People feel the tragedy, you know, the tragedy. कोई तुमसे पूछे कौन हूं मैं, तुम कह देना कोई खास नहीं. एक दोस्त है कच्चा पक्का सा, एक झूठ है आधा सच्चा सा, एक ख्वाब अधूरा पूरा सा, एक फूल है रूखा सूखा सा, एक सपना है बिन सोचा सा, एक अपना है अनदेखा सा, एक रिश्ता है अनजाना सा, हकीकत में अफसाना सा, कुछ पागल सा दीवाना सा, बस एक बहाना अच्छा सा. जीवन का ऐसा साथी है जो दूर हो तो कुछ पास नहीं. कोई तुमसे पूछे कौन हूं मैं, तुम कह देना कोई खास नहीं. Wow, people. Oh my God, this is so... It really hit a string with me. What can I say, man? The chord, it struck a chord, people. That's what I'm talking about. कोई तुमसे पूछे कौन हूं मैं, तुम कह देना कोई खास नहीं. Hi. Wah. I thought I'd share that with you guys. Play some music instead of sub. All right, Kazi, you're doing it. Imam Kazi Waleed Hussain, you're doing it. I will cast. Can you translate these poems into Spanish? I don't think my Spanish is up to that scratch yet, you know. I have to say, for the first time ever in this week, in one of my dreams, I was dreaming in Spanish, part of it. That means it's getting to that plateau, people. It's getting there. I don't think. And translating poems is... But I'll translate it into English, which will help you. He says, if somebody was to ask you, who am I? Just say, nobody too special. I'm a friend. Kacha pakka sa, as in an on and off kind of friend. I'm a lie that is half true. I'm a dream that has been left incomplete. I'm a flower or a rose or a flower that has been left half dry. A dream that has occurred without thinking of it or without trying to force it. I'm somebody that is familiar yet unseen. A relationship, but one that is unknown. A reality, yet one which is a fantasy. A bit insane, a bit crazy. At most, perhaps just a pretext, an excuse. Yet a companion within life, that if he is too far, nothing is near and close. If somebody was to ask you, who am I? Just say, nobody too special. Wah, 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 wah. So, people, what is going on? Some Latinas in Mufti's dream. There was some, I was speaking in Spanish in part of my dream. I only realized later on it was such a crazy dream, and I was thinking back, and then I was like, damn, that was weird. And then it just occurred to me, wait a minute. I was like, whoa, that was in Spanish? Oh, people, orale, it's coming along. So, people, what's going down? Do jinns drink gin? That is the question. Do they drink gin? Shaken, oh no, that's a martini. So, people, what's going down? What's going down? Let's see, people. What are some of the questions? Those of you that haven't caught up, by the way, with my latest, this is not the latest. There's been another mind trap after this as well. This is an amazing mind trap with Dr. Mehdi Sajid. Do check it out. Professor, I was telling Professor that, he's got the vibes from the Professor from Money Heist going on. Do check it out. An amazing discussion. Really covered some fascinating things, people. Cool. So, let me just... Alright, so... sometimes we get a lot of people being obsessed with religious signs. Like they'll say, I'll cut a tomato. And oh my God, I found the name of God written in it. So you heard I cut a tomato and it says Allah. So Allah must be true. So on that note, you had... This was in an omelette. And it's apparently legit that it's got the face of Hitler in it.
Oh my God!
So, people, this is why you can't be going around trying to prove God's existence by cutting a melon or, I don't know, crushing a banana. These kind of things are not how to prove the existence of God. So, what is going down, people? Khadim Rizvi, you're doing it. Somebody, Nuruddin Auragh has asked, what are your views on the birds, the ababil, in Surat al-Fil? And I have explained that in much detail previously, that I feel that's true. The birds may have pelted, but it's not quite in the way that people think. So, the elephants did not reach Mecca. That they were at Ta'if and then they decide to leave Ta'if and head towards Mecca because they don't even know where Mecca is. Mecca isn't a popular town, by the way. People thought later on that maybe Mecca used to be really popular. It was the life of Hijaz and Arabia. It wasn't. It was almost borderline unknown. It was like a tiny town. And it wasn't popular at all. But maybe some of the stories about some of the people may have been popular, but people don't know where it was. Hence, Abraha, when he comes and he goes to Ta'if, he then hears about Mecca, and they have this Kaaba, and he says, what on earth is this? And you know what, this temple, let's knock it down. Now, he doesn't reach Mecca. Just maybe not so far from Ta'if is where his elephants fall ill. And the reason this happens is because, you see, when he kind of sets up an encampment outside of Ta'if with all his elephants, he upsets the local habitat. Obviously, you can imagine bringing so many elephants and horses and things like this and setting it up. It destroys, it doesn't destroy, but it completely, deeply unsettles the natural habitat. And there were certain birds that, in the video, I go into much detail on what they were specifically, that were known to be local to Ta'if and the Arabian Peninsula, which were the ababil. Now, the elephants do rattle their kind of settlement. So what these birds do is they are generally known to carry small pelts back to their nests. So they start to drop these. But what it is these things are infested with it's judri, smallpox, which then triggers a kind of a mini outbreak amongst these elephants and his army, who catch this judri. So even when you read historically, certain Muslim sources had highlighted that there was an outbreak of judri around that time of smallpox, and they write that it came via the birds. So even historians had written that. It seems to be that the birds are the ones that brought this kind of outbreak of smallpox at the time in that region. So this is true, and with smallpox they are left. So what happens is, even though he's then getting his armies ready, we're going to go to Mecca, we're going to do this, they don't actually manage to go there. Because what happens is this outbreak triggers with all these bursts. They get all these kind of boils and things like this. And although the army does try to move, but then it's in too bad of a state that it's just kind of left there. And they head back. He just about narrowly escapes with his own life. So this, and hence the verse of the Quran about them being, ترميم بحجارة من سجيل فجعلهم كعصف مأكول. It's like as though they were left, as though they were eaten corn. That you see the boils and the way the bodies were kind of just left there. This was not because they got kind of like pelted and turned into that, but that triggered the infestation, the outbreak, and then they died and they were left like that in the plain. And hence there was several bones that were found as well outside of Ta'if in a certain, which is claimed to be like an army, and certain, I think, elephant bones and things like that were found as well. But they didn't reach Mecca, and the story of the popular story that he goes to Mecca and discusses with the grandfather of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I think that was that in its entirety is not true then. Or either it may have been that the news reached the grandfather of the Prophet, and he said that statement of, lil bayti rabbun yahmihi, and then people later dramatized it. So it may have been like that. Alright, what is going on, people? You're doing it with the super chats, people. You're doing it. Yeah. Wow, where's my... Oh, well, I'm pretty sure I had where's my book, just in case there was any notes. You know what, people? Let me just grab my un momento. I've put it here somewhere. Right, so what I'll do, let me just put the poem back up, and whilst I do that, that will allow me to just go grab my book from here.
बेजार हो गई हो बहुत जिंदगी से तुम बेजार हो गई हो तो बेजार ही रहो ये भी एक टेक्निक है साहब
Vah. You can never really get tired of John Elia. He is an epic legend. By the way, I've been reading through this book. I'll do a review of it soon, once I complete it. It's on Abu Lu'lu'a al-Majusi. You know, Abu Lu'lu'a, the one who murdered Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu an. It is incredibly fascinating. And he says in the Sunni and Shia imagination, who is Abu Lu'lu'a al-Majusi? And I've only got halfway through it yet, but I will finish it and hopefully I'll do a review next week. I love these kind of books, you know, where somebody's just done all this research and they just present it to you. And it's like a niche, kind of strange topic. I love stuff like that. Let me tell you a tip, actually. You know, most of my books, not most, I suppose many of these books are reference books, so I kind of know what I'm looking for and I order them. But you know, most of my very enjoyable reading, the ones that I've benefited from all this research and interesting things, the way I choose them is I don't go in with a mindset of, oh, I'm going to buy this book. I don't even know more than half the time that book exists. I just go into those bookstores, or if it's online, I will go to their list and I'll just kind of, I prefer it if it's in person, but you know, that's when I'm abroad. I go into these bookstores and I will just spend so long there. People are probably fed up of me that, what's this punk? They're like, what's that punk with a bloody a necklace like that? Oh, speaking of necklaces, we're going to have a video clip in the Masala segment of a Mufti Wasim, speaking about chains. But yeah, so I just kind of you know, meander throughout the bookshop. I will just go, I'll pick things up. I'll just be like, oh, what's this about? You know, oh, the Forgotten Kingdom. Oh, the archaeology and history of Northern Israel. Okay, that's interesting. What's that about? And like that, I end up buying books. I buy books by kind of like, I want interesting, weird, kind of like, I find these things really fascinating, that kind of really tantalize my curiosity. So something like this is a perfect example. Abu Lu'lu' al-Majusi. I'll be like, wow, like I read that in the Shia and Sunni imagination. What the hell is that about? And then I'll go, like with that, I bought a bunch of books. This is another one I've got to go through. Al-Jinsu fil Quran. Sex in the Quran, the concept of sex within the Quran by Ibrahim Mahmoud. And he's kind of going through the whole thing of how is the concept of sex conceptualized within the Quran? Is there a sense of eroticism that is there within the Quran? Does it appear? Does it not? Obviously, this is his theory. I've got to go through that yet, but you see, like that, I will be like, whoa, what a topic. Let me pick that up. And this is how I kind of do book shopping. So if people, and I don't mean, obviously, there'll be books like these that you can see behind me. These you'll probably know about anyway if you're into it. So those kind of things I'll obviously order because I know exactly what they are. But most of the other books that I really enjoy, though, they're these kind of smaller books that somebody's just done so much weird research on and he's published. Yeah. Cool, people. You're doing it. You're doing it. Claire Jones, you're doing it. Supporte says, Ishaq Mullah has asked a question. You're doing it with the super chat. Your take on women's testimony, only half of a man's. That's not true. I've got a detailed video on that. It's on YouTube, Women's Testimony in Islam. Do check it out. I'll try and share it again on social media this week. Now, the verse of the Quran, it does not mean what people think. You see, what it is first of all, where Allah mentions that Um, he's speaking about, oh, when you're traveling and you're setting kind of like agreements and so on, that, that have testimony, like, write it down. And this is being mentioned in one of the longest verses in the Quran, known as Ayatul Mudayana, and write it down and do this and do that. But then it mentions that, oh, if you can't find, then, two women, أن تضل إحداهما فتذكر إحداهما الأخرى, that if one of them was to go astray, the other would bring her back on track. But people, because the other verse, the verse says أن تضل إحداهما, that one of them is to go astray, tadil from dalala, it mentions that, oh, fatudhakkir, the other one will remind her. Now here what people assumed is because it mentions to remind, the first one must mean to forget. So people say, well, oh, because women's memory and intellect is far less than men. That's not true. And the Quran never said أن تنسى إحداهما. It said أن تضل إحداهما فتذكر إحداهما الأخرى. But they made an assumption. But not everybody went with that. Sufyan ibn Uyayna, he disagreed with it, and other people, and I mentioned it in the clip that some of the Salaf disagreed. And what was the true meaning of this? The meaning was to do with intimidation. And it was far easier to intimidate a woman than it was a man. And since this was to do with money and debt, and it's a big thing in that society, people, they don't, they would kill you over money. And it was so much easier to just threaten a woman, to say, especially in those societies, to just say, well, you better watch yourself. So whereas the man may have had a whole tribe with him, now the woman did have her husband's tribe, for example, or her tribe, but sometimes, it just was easier to intimidate women, that they may have felt, look, it's not worth it, and I'll just kind of go with that story of his as a witness. So hence there were two witnesses, two women. And this is why in the conditions as well, many of the scholars had written that they weren't allowed to separate the two women witnesses, and they weren't allowed to do so on. But that's what it was about, and that would apply still today in where that is relevant in the world. It's not to do with gender in the sense that the woman is incapable, but I would say arguably it would apply with men as well. If there's a certain part of the world where testimony is, where there's a certain, let's say there's a certain people, a class of people that are easily intimidated, or easily subjected to intimidation, then you would double up. That would just be the basic. So let's just say there's a particular union or a particular trade or a particular people which were easily intimidated due to their like somebody could say, let's say students in this day and age in a particular, it doesn't have to be students ain't necessarily easily intimidated, but I'm just giving an example. There could be a particular genre of people, so that would apply. And if women are still in some parts of the world easily intimidated, unfortunately, then it would apply. But it was nothing to do with the inherent quality of the intellect of women. That's ridiculous. I do personally believe that from a biological perspective, that men's brains and women's brains are the biology of men and women is different, but it does not reflect the level of intellect. For example, it doesn't mean that men are necessarily cleverer or more intelligent. That's not true. Both are, they have that, it's an equal platform. Both can be as intelligent as each other. It is true that men and women are sometimes drawn to different kind of fields, like the STEM sciences and things like this. field, sorry, that you see men more drawn towards things like that, towards mathematics, towards hard kind of things. And I feel that just may reflect the kind of interest and the way the brains are, that they are drawn towards certain things. But it doesn't speak of capacity. So it doesn't mean that men are generally mathematicians. They're not. I mean, not to be raw, but by and large, most men, you may come across many men, they're just dumb. I don't mean to be kind of putting men down, but I'm just saying it does not mean that just because men may be drawn more to mathematics than women, that men by and large are mathematicians. That's not the case. So, yeah. And, on that note, I would like to say, Amil, you're doing it with the super chat. I'd like to say that, look, I've been asked this question. I was asked this recently by by a girl, European, who had an interest in Islam, but she was not really this is my impression from what she said, that, and this was obviously a message, so she was driven away, kind of disenchanted by religion based on the institutionalized kind of version of religion, seeing it as very patriarchal and misogynistic and so on. And she was really impressed with some thinkers. So recently there's a European thinker, Ustad Ali Ghandour. Now he shared a clip of mine, or some clips of mine, and praised them. And this led to a kind of surge of his following kind of following me. So within a couple of days, like within a week, I had like many people. I mean, I'm not saying like thousands and thousands, but I had many people following me suddenly that were all kind of like German or, from the Netherlands and it was just strange because I started thinking, whoa, like I'm getting, every day so many in the, like in the tens and tens, like suddenly on Instagram, all these people who are all German following me. And I'm thinking, well, that's really strange. I mean, have I suddenly said something in German? So then I realized, oh, well, this, Ali Ghandour had shared something of mine. And so from on the back of that, several of these people, and this lady as well, so she was asking me, look, are there any women scholars? Why ain't there women scholars? Not are there any, why ain't there any women scholars? And I thought, this is a really interesting question. And I don't, what are my thoughts on this? Now, there are some women scholars, like just regular run-of-the-mill kind of ustadas and sheikhas, and so they might do some tafsir and some dars on the Seerah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or that kind of stuff. And maybe dhikr gatherings and stuff like that. But generally, like this kind of thinking out of the box and that kind of stuff, you don't get the sheikha kind of phenomenon like that. You will get some Muslim Arab thinking, especially Arabs, some Arab female academics. So like Doktora, these Dakatira, that are kind of thinking out of the box, and they're very passionate, and but they're not really imams in that sense within the deen. So they're more on the academic front. In fact, recently there was a video shared to me about I think she's a Tunisian Doktora, with some really amazing, just a twist on certain things. And I thought, wow, I got to watch her video. And I was like, wow, anything that's like weird, and I don't know why I find it fascinating, even if I'm not going to accept it, but I want to see what is the thinking behind this. And I get really intrigued, even if I don't agree, but I become really fascinated by the way people think. So but my point is that these are not within the religious circles. So they're not like people that will lead prayers and do dhikr and that kind of, the Islamic circles. So why is this? Now, one may be that people say, well, there's a lack of opportunity. And I think, okay, that may play some of a role, but really there is a reasonable amount of opportunity out there for women to kind of go and study and do things. The other thing is people may say, well, the lack of opportunity, okay, but there's a lack of freedom that these women have to go. Now, that may have some reality. I agree with that to some extent, that look, a lack of, like, let's say their parents don't agree for them to just go off and travel, and that's true. Although, to be fair, there are still many women that have done that. Many Muslim women that have gone and traveled, and so, as an example, when I went in the 90s, late 90s, to study, I went to Damascus, and I spent like, I think, a year and a half or something in the first time I was in Damascus. And then I had like 3 visits back. I came back again and then came back again. But in that first stay of mine in Damascus, when I was in Damascus University, there were certain women, Muslim girls, that had come from the West. Now, there was one girl who I don't know where she was from. I think she was American, if I recall correctly. She couldn't have been British. And she was definitely English speaking. So I'm pretty sure American. And I think her name may have been something like Saima, or I don't know. Maybe I've got that wrong. Maybe it was Salma, or maybe it was... But she was a full niqabi, like niqabiya. But she was really talented. I've got to say, her Arabic was on point. And she was like, when we did exams in the class, she came, she would take top position. Like, she was like, and the class had like probably about 25 students in it. And we're all like mature people. So, and people from all over, like America, Europe, you name it, different parts, India, Pakistan, UK, Africa. It was like a whole mishmash, and this girl was really good, actually. So I remember thinking, wow, like, she would get all the things right. She would get all these. On some of the grammar, she was just, on that, she was outperformed by Apun. Yours truly, people. That too unprepared. I would go in unprepared and I'd just top the exams. So that's Apun ka style. That's how I did things and do things in life. But other than that, for hard work, because she was obviously hard working, so I have to say, I would love to be able to connect with these people again. In that day and age, there was no social media, but if anybody does know these people, or if anybody knows people that were studying in Damascus during the years 98 and 99, like those years, do let me know, because there were a bunch of guys as well that were studying there. So there were many guys from London, and we were in Ma'had al-Amaniya together, but I would love to connect with them now, but I don't even remember their names. I think it's such a shame. I think there was maybe an Ismail, an Abu Bakr. Maybe I'm reinventing these names. I don't know, but if you guys do know any of the people, do put me in touch with them, because I would definitely love to reconnect. There were a bunch of guys from London anyway, so. Yeah, but coming back to the topic, I think that it's not necessarily that second point. I do think that there isn't, that generally this topic of academic religious study is a bit dry. And most people find it boring. And I think women more so are not driven towards it. Just as they're not driven towards the STEM sciences given an equal the kind of STEM fields. In a similar way, the academic abstract side of things like fiqh and usulul fiqh and all this kind of stuff, men ain't either. But like, if you were to compare, like, imagine I had a gathering of 200 people in front of me, students, or people interested, 100 women, 100 men. And I was to talk about, the madhabs, and they disagree, and the usul of the Malikiya, and they've got this principle, and this principle then clashes with that principle of the Shafi'iyya, and they've got this debate. I guarantee you that out of those that would become interested in what I've got to say, like who would go away and actively research this, it would be heavily outnumbered against women. Like, the women, I don't think they would be drawn to that. Honestly, there have been a handful of women I've ever come across who have been incredibly passionate about stuff like this. And I've been amazed that they've been so passionate about it, because I just don't expect it. And they've like kind of go out of their way, like they're constantly obsessed. Because, I mean, most men ain't either, but if you were to put it on an equal par, you'd find far less women drawn towards that, because I think it's too dry for them. Whereas if I was to be speaking on spirituality, for example, or doing dhikr, or doing things like this, and I think that the people who would go away and follow that up with an interest would be more women than men. I mean, there would be probably many men as well, but I think it would be slightly outnumbered by women. That's my own experience of the general Muslim mind and the Muslim crowd. So I do think there is an inherent thing in the Islamic sciences that doesn't draw, that many women are not necessarily drawn towards an academic pursuit of it. Like, to them, the deen isn't, like, they don't see they do see it as an academic, but I don't think they find it as enjoyable to invest their time in. Like, they don't mind learning. Men don't as well, but I'm just saying. So that was my response to this topic. I don't know if it's controversial, but I wonder how the women feel about that. I mean, those women that watch this, if they let me know your feedback. And this doesn't mean you're not interested in Islam. They're definitely interested in Islam, definitely interested in learning about the Prophet, about the Quran, about the Sunnah. But I mean the kind of dry aspect of things like fiqh and the debates and the the usul and the kind of all this tiny specks of data. I don't think it interests them. I could be wrong on this, but yeah. So that's my thoughts. Cool. Alright, people. Mufti, Didi said, Mufti, ? You're doing it, Didi. ये double D क्या है यार ये? What's this DD thing going on? This
Dajjal with a small d. Or we can say mini Dajjals, no problem. But there is one Dajjal with a big D, okay?
Correct. So what's this DD? Right, Mufti, thoughts on words. Cha. What is going down? New Smithsonian, shukran for the super chat. You're doing it. Why doesn't God give more revelation? Why reveal for thousands of years and then stop? But I don't think God was revealing for thousands of years in that sense. It's just revelation that comes and then it stops. You see, it wasn't. It's like it's what we call. I would borrow the term from evolution, punctuated equilibrium. You think Mufti does not know the technical terminologies, huh? The English. I come with the English. So punctuated equilibrium. It's not a balanced kind of equilibrium of revelation that it happens in fact, it's punctuated. It's just sudden at a certain point. People. Khadim Rizvi says double D is also a breast size. I know, my friend.
Teasing me.
So, what is going down, people? What is going down? Farid Kayani says, Mufti, do animals have a place in the afterlife? And could you ask for them in Jannah? Does Islam mention anything about them? I would feel that, look, all life would continue. Does animal life continue? Why not? I mean, it could. I feel it could, but does it have to? I don't feel it has to, but it could. I don't think there's anything against. Some people feel that, yeah, animals do continue because in the famous hadith that animals are resurrected and they receive justice. Although the Ash'ari view of that is that's just a metaphor for trying to say justice will be to the nth degree. Yeah. So, but I feel that that's permissible. It's not that it can't be. Riz Shabir, you're doing it, Riz, you're doing it. Saying just busy multitasking, got a lot on. All right, you're doing it. Shadman Shah says Lena Akes daughter. Akes, that must be a name, I take it. Video about mut'ah when the Mufti talks about this. Try YouTubing it. Best of luck, brother. Yep, I do have a video. Shukran for that, Lena. That's awesome. Wasim Ustad ji. Bahut dhanyawad. Right, so right now, yeah, I do have an old video on mut'ah. I mean, I have a video. I have quite a few. I'm sure I have a couple where I'm speaking about mut'ah. I don't believe it's haram, yeah, so it's up to people. It's definitely not going to be liked in the Muslim culture. 100% not going to be. It's only going to be liked to be practiced. It's not going to be liked to be accepted. You know, it's those things. But, you know, people have this view where they'll be like, you know, oh, well, if you like this, then would you like it? Oh, would you like it with your own sister than any? And with your own mother than any? And would you like it with your daughter than any? Sorry, I gotta. Where's my tissues? You like it than any? You see, this is just dumb and retarded. Because the truth is, look, in society, there's many things we all like, but we don't like to be doing those things in front of like other family members and things like, you know, like we as human beings can differentiate. You know, it's just think about it on a rational basis. That's like saying, well, you know, even the concept of intimacy and what goes on during intimacy, it's not that people don't like to be thinking of their parents like that. I mean, that's like disgusting and sick. Yeah. They wouldn't like to be thinking of their sisters or brothers like that, or their, you know, their sons and daughters like that. That's not how they. You see, the human mind doesn't like to think like that. But sure, just as the things they get up to, so will the other people be getting up to that as well. But they just don't want to think about that because, and that's normal, that's natural, you know. There's a reason why you don't think of it like that. But it doesn't mean that, oh my God, then that, you know, that this is then if this is permissible, then they should be, you know, it's like, what the hell is wrong with sick people? And I feel that that's just a very dumb argument. Right, so there was a Kapil Patel, you're doing it with the super chat, you do. Salam, would you consider going on David Wood's stream? He's having a Muhammad week, inviting people to defend the Prophet Muhammad on live stream. Okay, I didn't know about that. That's interesting. I'll look into it. You see, the only thing is, sure, okay, I'll look into it. I have no problem presenting my understanding of of Islam. The problem is that people don't really want that understanding, because I don't know what we would. You see, people want a very hardline view because it's easy to then kind of go kind of like toe to toe and head to head with something that is very it's an easy target. See, my kind of view of Islam and how I would describe the Prophet and things, it doesn't necessarily clash with what they. So people, but I have no objection. I will look into it, inshallah. If it's possible, then yeah. Bro, Haji and Mufti, nate. Rosa, enjoy it. Life is poetry. I won't ask your age. Lol. My age. I'm in old age now, or according to some, where life begins once again. I'm 41. You're doing it, people. You're doing it. That's it. Life is a box of frogs. You teasing me? Alright. Va. Aval. No, I did that, didn't I? Could you translate into Spanish? I did that. Where I said I don't think my Spanish would be that. Yeah, but I've done these. Why have I gone back in? These super chats seem to be going backwards. Methods for learning Spanish. Right, okay. I've been slacking a bit with my academic learning of Spanish. But what I seem to be doing is I've got books and stuff. So, as an example, this is a book in Spanish, Año Nuevo, Vida Nueva. So this is just at a B1 level. So it's just speaking about this guy. But this is a really good author, by the way, Juan Fernandez. And he just goes through the story. There's certain summaries, keywords, questions, and he's got the his whole thing is, if it's all in Spanish, but it's designed in a way that you can understand it. And I've got a couple of his books. So like that, I do have certain things I'm working. I've already been through the very basics and done them. And then I went through apps. I used Duolingo, was a really good one. Then I went through certain books, and this was a while back now. And then I started just going through, my Spanish was intermediate. So this was enough, but recently what I've been doing really is just watching loads of Spanish TV. I watch Spanish series. I love Spanish series or Spanish movies. So I watch them. And I just kind of that's where, I was saying the dreaming thing, because, when you watch it so much and you're like, and sometimes where I'll be like, whoa, what did they say? Then I'll change the subtitles to Spanish as well. And I'll kind of see right, that's how they say that. All right. So stuff like that. And I follow a lot of Spanish things on Instagram. So, where they'll share memes, jokes, and I learn like that. And I follow a lot of that kind of stuff. So I'll kind of, I'll try, and if I don't understand the joke, the meme, I'll kind of Google it. What did this mean? And because sometimes they use slang, and I'll get used to that. And so that's how I've been just doing it recently. But I should kind of get back more into the proper academic way. But this is a fun way of learning. You just watch a bunch of. I even managed to. I subscribed to one of the kind of Latin things. You see, the Latin kind of Netflix version, like their own, and then you can't get it here in the UK because they don't really accommodate for the UK. But VPN. So I hack the system. But yeah, people. Somebody said, handsome haunted, my super chat, Mufti. I didn't see yours. Super chat, man. I no see it, man. Let me go back up and see. Oh, there it is. Handsome Hound, you're doing it. When we do it, Zina. Huh? यार ये कहाँ हो रहा है यार? When we do zina, when we do it's zina, when we do it's zina, when religious scholars do its nikah, urfi. Why this kolaveri? Why this double standard? Are we a plaything in the hands of mullah? What's urfi? What's nikah urfi? Yeah. Inaya says, don't forget my super chat. Angry face. Inaya ji ye ka ho raha hai? Mufti, if our souls leave the body at death, then why do we donate organs, change the personality of the person into the dead person? Right, okay. Well, first of all, this one. Right, the soul for me is consciousness, and consciousness is actually, I think, out there, and we are kind of tapping into it. So we are kind of like we are a receiving device that receives the signal. So yes, the signal does impact what we can get, but also the device, what its capabilities will also impact the signal. As in how much it can, how capable it is. So there is a kind of like an interplay between the two. I don't think that so if that makes sense. So giving away an organ, does that mean that the person who gets the new organ could inherit some memories? Is this what the question is? There has been a fascinating BBC program actually that showed that there were certain people that happened to suddenly find spontaneous memories which they had no recollection. It was not part of them. So, like an interest in, all of a sudden, a sudden interest in skydiving. And you think, well, what the hell is wrong with, and then you find out, well, skiing, and you find out, well, actually, the organ that you just had belonged to somebody who was a famous skier, or he loved skiing all his life, or she did. And things like this, I would definitely say that is profound. It definitely weighs in that, could it be that you can, because of that organ being so familiar with that ruh, that consciousness, that you also could tap into that? I feel that that's possible. Scientifically, it's very difficult to currently explain how that organ, like that liver transplant, heart transplant, how did it bring about a change in personality? It's difficult currently to explain that from a psychological perspective or from a scientific perspective. Cool. I hope that helps. You're doing it. Nikah urfi. So nikah urfi is just basically a private nikah, non-registered, it's just look, how about we just do a nikah? And I agree that I don't think the zina in the Quran that is being condemned is necessarily the you see, it's not just the kind of boyfriend-girlfriend sex. I don't think so. I think because it's not sex, because if you think about it, like, think about this, right? Sex is exactly the same whether it's in nikah or outside of nikah. The action is the same, is it not? So if the sex per se is such a fahisha, such an obscene atrocity, let's say, innahu kana, what is it? It's a fahisha wa sa'a sabila, something so, and la taqrabu zina, don't even go close to it. It's such an atrocity. What is it? Is it the sex? Because the sex they're clearly having, within nikah, and it's the same sex, is it not? So it can't be the act, and they're having it at that time with the concubines. So it can't be the act itself, because the act is identical. It's not like so you can imagine they said, look, don't eat this meat and eat that meat. Why? Well, okay, that is slaughtered and this isn't slaughtered. Okay, fair enough. There's that. Okay, does the blood, for example, draining the blood, it creates a different kind of qualitative result with the meat, as opposed to just kind of hitting the animal on the head and the way the blood. Okay, fair enough. But the actual intimacy in and out of a relationship, out of a nikah, is the same intimacy. It's the same two people being intimate. So what is it that is being condemned? So I feel that what was being condemned was actually quite different. I'm not trying to say that Islam was condoning this either. It wasn't saying, hey, people go out there and be intimate and have sex. But that wasn't the harsh condemnation targeted towards just the intimacy. That would be absurd in my understanding, because then it would equally apply everywhere else. What that was targeting was the exploitation. You see, because what people were doing in many cases, when it came to zina, they were doing it on false promises and exploiting certain, often in those societies, girls. So what they would do is they would give them this kind of, oh, look, listen, because generally it wasn't that, in many cultures, even here in these liberal societies, it's not that, people say, well, oh, in these societies, everybody's liberal, but it's not like, hey, a guy will just go to a girl, let's have sex. All right, cool, let's have it. Women, even in very liberal societies, are still reluctant to be just intimate with just guys, just like that. It's not like, to them, it is still something generally, for the most part, it's something still that has to be very meaningful for them. I mean, that you'll get certain cases where they will have casual sex and no strings attached kind of sex, or just one night stands. But for the most part, even in these very societies, if you speak to people, non-Muslims, speaking to women, like how much, if they had to count how much sex they've had, like how many people have they slept with, it's not going to be as high as you'd think. The body count isn't actually that high, and as opposed to men, because for them, for men, it's a kind of like, it's a victory thing, isn't it? Real men. So my point is that, you see, in those societies, what they would do is, obviously, they're trying to get it on with the girl. Now, the girl generally isn't having it that easily. So people sometimes will just lure her in through false promises. Oh, look, listen, don't worry, we're going to do this. I'll set this up. And in his mind, he knows that's a lie. But you see, she buys into it. And then, as he becomes intimate with her, has sex with her, and many of these girls in those societies would have been virgins. So as he does that, he then disappears, or he confronts her, breaks her trust. This vision, these dreams are shattered, thereby crippling her trust in any future relationship. And you see, this is very deep. It's at a much deeper level. It's not just about intimacy. It's not just about the act. You see, this woman then goes on to deeply distrust any future relationship. And should that, God forbid, happen again to her, she will probably lose all trust. And this, if done so often, could destabilize a society that is not that large. So this is what I think the Quran was condemning when it was saying zina. It was, obviously, sex was involved. It was one of the ingredients in that act. Just as in riba, in loan sharkery, exploitation, obviously money was involved. It was one of the ingredients in that act. But so intimacy was there, but it was actually the exploitation, the overarching exploitation that was really, that was casting a shadow on this whole act, that was making it such an abomination that Allah condemns it to that degree. That's, in my understanding, what it was talking about. That's not to say it was saying, well, just casual sex was, okay. It wasn't, but I feel that's not what it was addressing here. It was addressing this. The other thing is, in this day and age, where people have exclusive relationships that are known to the world, like people on social media will say, oh, in a relationship with such and such, and you could tag on their profile and they're saying, well, I'm in a relationship with such and such. This, in many ways, I wouldn't see much different to a nikah. If people are openly expressing that we are in a relationship together to the world, I think it's very difficult to argue that how that's different from a nikah from a shari'i perspective. It's not a institutionalized relationship. I accept that. It's not like a formalized, like a marriage, the way we have registering a marriage. It's not like that, because that then kind of further adds layers of responsibility. But this would have some level of, this would amount to, if people openly and expressed to the world they were in relationship with somebody else, that would amount to a nikah urfi, which is a an informal Islamic relationship. So it's a non-registered. So it's, they're not technically, legally, or even if it's not legally or formally married in that sense within society. Marriage isn't there, but they have a nikah, so their relationship is halal. This would at the very least amount to a nikah urfi, in my understanding, if they were in a very open, as in people knew about it. And like in many relationships, people know that such and such, they are together and they're exclusive. Yeah. Cool. So I hope that makes some sense. Cool. Right. Peoples, look at all these questions on sex and Zina and yari hokara. All right. So what is going on, peoples? What? I tell you what. Let's take some questions, and then we'll take a look at. I'll do that review actually. All right. I see you have Streamlabs. Consider moving over to Twitch and streaming there. You can do a lot of things with chat, like slow it and automize reducing spam, etc. Much better functions. Okay, I'm not sure about Twitch. You see, it's just because I'm not a gamer. Even Streamlabs took me so long to really learn this, and I don't know, I could experiment with Twitch, but I don't know how much. The chat is fine, really. On YouTube, chat is fine. I can zoom back, and today I've even figured out how to figure out the Facebook chat, so I've got that here as well. I can zoom back, scroll back through it, so it seems fine for now. Right, so people, hi from Australia. Fahad, you're doing it. Right, somebody said, what are your thoughts? Majid Wahid. What a name, huh? Rhyming. Right, what are your thoughts on making genetically modified pigs to farm human organs that are grown in them? What about cloning brainless, unconscious humans to farm organs from them? Yeah, I think, you know what? I think that's fine. People are going to be like, Mufti, you goddamn tyrant. But no, seriously, I feel that, first of all, pigs with human organs, farming them to kind of have human organs, I think is an amazing idea. And as far as what about having, did it say humans? About cloning brainless, unconscious humans? I would even be down for that. But people are going to flip. I don't think I should lead a country, should I? Because I would think, look, I get the fact they're going to say, well, if they're unconscious, they're not conscious in that sense, and we can verify that, then I would see no problem in that personally, because I think it's for the greater good, you see. Because, it's all fine now. You say, oh, but, but that pig is gonna, but that conscious unconscious human is going to be like, but I wouldn't really think of it as human then. I would just think of it as a kind of just something manufactured. Because it's all fine thinking like that until somebody of your own goes through something, or somebody that you see it. And then you'd think, well, bloody hell, imagine now being able to have a pair of fresh lungs, a pair of, or a liver, or a pair of kidneys, or a heart, imagine being able to have it on tap. What a world that would be. And to be honest, I think we would move towards a point where we wouldn't even need the human. We could just farm and harvest the organs within machinery. I think that would be much more amazing, because it would bypass this debate then. Yeah, but I definitely feel we ought to. I'm all up for this, this kind of like amazing, like, should we create robots that are like this? I'm like, yeah, let's do it, man. This debate on should we recreate a Neanderthal? We've got the genome to do it. I think, yeah, let's do it. And it'd be interesting. Let's learn from them. Like, what? But yeah, I don't think come on, if we create genetically modified like a Neanderthal, they're not going to take over the world. There's only going to be a few of them. Come on, relax, people. But I would be really intrigued to see how they then grow up, and how do they learn language? Do they not learn language? I think it'd be really fascinating. But yeah. But people would think, obviously, please invite Hamdi Saab on your mind trap. Yeah. Definitely. I have to invite him. Gaurav, you're doing it with the super chat. Is that you though? Ishaq, why is the diya of a woman half of a man? I've answered that as well, by the way, so do check my response on that. I have a whole video dedicated to that. I go through all the reports and I show that that's nonsense. I do not accept that. And Imam Malik, see, it's interesting the hadith he brings, because this absolutely clashes with the Quran. Absolutely clashes with, contradicts the teaching of the Quran, that ba'dukum min ba'd, that you are, this is what the mu'minun, this is what you are, and the sunnah, that the mu'minun tatakafa dima'uhum, that their blood is equal. And why would that not include the women amongst them? And people say, oh, but it might not. But that same hadith, look at the hadith, that وَيَسْعَى بِذِمَّتِهِمْ أَدْنَاهُمْ, that هُمْ يَدٌ عَلَى مَنْ سِوَاهُمْ وَيَسْعَى بِذِمَّتِهِمْ أَدْنَاهُمْ, that they are united, and even the least of the Muslims, like those in the whatever, even a child or whatever, the least of the Muslims can strike a kind of deal for the Muslims. Like, they can make something that is binding. And why was this said? Because that meaning that anyone, and the reason the Prophet is saying even adnahum, even the lowest, not because the person has to be the lowest, but trying to say that there is no hierarchical system in this, even if it were to be the lowest. Because the Prophet's daughter had offered Abu al-As when he came. She gave him sanctuary. And the Muslims said, they objected that he's a non-Muslim. How can she give him? He came to visit her in Medina and he spent time with her. And this is really fascinating, because then later he embraces Islam. But look how the Prophet didn't kind of say, oh my God, you're not a Muslim. Why are you seeing my daughter? And why are you doing? There was none of this. She was just an adult. She didn't come to the Prophet and say, oh, my husband, who, by the way, abandoned me and was in Mecca and was with the kuffar against us, has now many years later turned up, and he's in my house, by the way, alone with me. Is that okay? She didn't. She just, like an adult, dealt with it. And the Prophet never interfered. He never said anything. And in fact, when people came and when people found out that, oh my God, he's here in Medina, he's a kafir, she said, I've given him my word for sanctuary. And the Prophet, when asked, upheld that, said that we al-mu'minuna, that tatakafat dima'uhum, that the blood is one, of one value. And even the like what yas'a bi dhimmatihim adnahum, if any of them gave their word, it is binding. Like if they gave sanctuary, dhimma is more to do with sanctuary, their word for sanctuary. That this, and this was this, this is the seerah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And you know how people today, they're so controlling. But just think about that. He's a man, kafir, he's come to see his wife. He believes, okay, are they even still husband and wife? And then he does embrace, but do they have to do a new nikah? No. Weren't they together, seeing each other in between at that time when he comes to Medina? Of course. Where was he staying? In her house? This, and the Prophet, and this wasn't a kind of, oh my God, kind of thing. And I think these are the things that we should be learning from the character of the Prophet ﷺ from. That that people are adults, they are empowered, they live their own lives. Women, if the Prophet's daughter is saying this, she's meeting with her ex-husband, she's meeting, it's not my business. It's not for me to be dictating or telling her, don't go with him, or why is he meeting you? Why is he in your house? Where is the mahram? The mahram, like today's haram police would be there. Where's the mahram? Imagine the haram police today. The daughter of the Prophet, they would be there like, where's the mahram? This is a kafir, this is this. They cannot be, the third person is the shaitan. All this kind of stuff. No, none of this stuff. See, and this is the beauty of the character of the Prophet ﷺ. But people don't, this side, they kind of cast aside and they ignore it. And then they just emphasize battles and this and that. And, and this is where I was saying earlier on today about why the Seerah has unfortunately been hijacked. But yeah, so cool. I hope that makes some sense, people. Soul Reaper, check my super chat. I don't see your super chat. Alright, let me check. I can't see it. So, Soul Reaper, send it again. I'll take a look at it. I'm not saying you have to send it as a super chat, but you can just. Alright, so yeah, it's amazing. These things, I wish somebody could gather these lessons from the life of the Prophet ﷺ and present them. You see, the thing is, these gems are all there, but unfortunately, people have created all this kind of a haystack. And these things have been kind of drowned into that haystack. And we've got to find them. And then you need somebody with a mind of, of compassion to see this and then highlight it to people. Because that's another problem. People, they even if they read it, they'll kind of cover it up because they would be like, I don't want my daughter doing that. And they'll be like, no, this probably meant something else. But yeah. So is a mahram not needed? Of course not. What is this? Look, these things are just said as simple guidelines for people to know better in certain circumstances. But it doesn't mean that people always need to have a mahram. If people can take care of themselves, they can take care of themselves. But this is just a guideline. Like in society, you set a certain principle out there. It does not mean that like nobody can do it. Like, so imagine you said, well, you shouldn't just leave a knife lying around as a certain principle in society. People at home shouldn't just have that. But it doesn't mean that now, oh my God, I can't have a knife lying around. I could. I mean, I obviously would be sensible enough to deal with it appropriately. I wouldn't just, So this is the kind of thing. Okay, so that's how I would advise. So this isn't true that, oh, you need this mahram always there, and like you can't trust yourself, and at the end of the day, look, she was already in a relationship with that man before, and obviously they loved each other. So even though they'd been separated now for many years, but the point is how it's amazing how Islam honors that kind of independent thinking and adult thinking, that they're like, it's not controlling. I just felt that's very amazing. Soul Reaper Mufti, do you distinguish between reason and rationality? Something that may be unreasonable may not necessarily be a rational impossibility. Right, okay. Damn, I gotta have a sip of my coffee before I read that again. Alright, Mufti, do you distinguish between reason? So reason is the ability of a healthy mind to make judgment based on experience, okay, or based on what we have as facts. So that is the actual definition of reason. Now, necessarily be a rational something that may be unreasonable may not necessarily be a rational impossibility. Okay, so rationality, you see, rationale and reason often will go hand in hand generally, but our reason may supersede the rationale in certain things. So, because based on experience of facts. So, it may be that so as an example, it is not rational for something to be in two places at the same time, to preoccupy two distinct locations simultaneously. One body. That's not rational. But due to our experience with facts and research into quantum physics, we have demonstrated through our experience that actually happens. So in the quantum world, it happens. So we'll find subatomic particles preoccupying more than one space simultaneously. So now that becomes reasonable. It enters our realm of reason, even though it's still kind of not rational. So that's how I distinguish between the two. But generally, for the most part, they are, they go hand in hand for the most part. So, yeah, and some things you're right, they may not be a rational impossibility, but it's not, reason doesn't rule. So, for example, they could be, like, it could be rational that some particular creatures could fly in a certain way, or that some, but it just doesn't work that way. What allows birds to fly? Obviously, you're going to look at the weight, the mass, obviously gravity, all these, or buoyancy, like what floats, for example. How they can kind of float in water and swim. Buffaloes, whereas, it's so large, and so certain things, it's not, it's rationality doesn't rule out that certain other things should be able to fly. Why? Well, I don't, like, let's look at, you can look at a turkey, a peacock flying in certain things, and you think, well, why not a chicken? Like in certain things. So I think rationally they could be possible, certain things, but maybe through reason and experience we find that, oh, well, okay, these things don't happen based on this. So is that what, I think that's what is probably the question, probably what you're asking. Right. I'm not so sure about that. Is based on a calculation, not intellect. Yeah, but they say that reason is the ability of a healthy mind to pass judgment. That is the definition of reason, based on our experience. So, see, that's where the experience allows the facts and the data to kind of come in and to kind of influence our reason. So that's what it is. Yep, I don't know. That's how maybe other people look at it differently. All right, I tell you what, whilst we're waiting for some other interesting questions, all right, let's take a look. People, let me tell you about some perfumes that I've come across. Peoples. Right, let's begin with now what has made it. This has made it to my number 2, people. Peoples. This, let me present to you, is Tom Ford Grey Vetiver. Oh, rather, people, rather. Now, this is a fragrance from 2009 that Tom Ford brought about, something that has a, you know, when you smell it straight away, obviously it's named vetiver. The vetiver, has a very strong presence right through. Okay, but it is a very kind of like a light, it's been described as sunny kind of fragrance. Something that for its for its base notes, you do have amberwood and oak moss, but it has allegedly, I think, grapefruit. They say grapefruit in its opening notes to kind of open it up. I think it's just layered in 2 ways, actually. This, not in the regular 3 that you get, and it does have a kind of a bit of a woody undertone to it. But I put this on. When you put it on straight away, it seems okay. But as it settles, it's amazing. Honestly, I found it amazing. And it's a very, as far as Tom Ford goes, it's quite cheap, relatively, as far as Tom Ford goes. And I feel it's underrated. It's one of those fragrances that you can wear anywhere. Seriously, I think it's an all-rounder. Like, it's something which, some fragrances could be too loud for certain, and some, maybe too not loud enough. But this, it's not so loud. It's just got a middle balance. It's not that loud, in that sense, but it made its way into my Mufti number 2 list. So I have like kind of my number 1, and number 1 is not just one perfume. There might be a couple that have made it in there. And then number 2, because I just can't decide which one gets the better. And then number 3. And this has definitely made it to my number 2, people. Va, Grey Vetiver. I have to say, absolutely, people. Right, this, let me present to you the second. So there were 2 I wanted to tell you guys about. This is a brand that I've come across recently, actually. And it's something which, I'd not actually heard of this brand before. It's a kind of like a niche market. And I bought it as a tester. And I fell in love with it. Wow. Peoples. It is the pronunciation Tiziana Terenzi, people. It is, and this particular fragrance is called Oud Tarased. I'd not heard of it before. I won't lie to you. Damn, I just sprayed my mic. This, when you put it on straight away, it is very strong. It has opening notes of black pepper, of cardamom, of saffron. It has middle notes that will start to kick in of rose, which you might think, well, I'm not really a fan of that. Of pepper, some peppery kind of middle notes. But then it goes into its oud, agarwood, its kind of base, it's kind of warm. It's got apparently cashmere wood, but it's also got a caramel. I felt maybe a vanilla as well, but it's got like a leather as a base note. This, people, let me tell you, from only 2016, I believe it was made. It was inspired by a mysterious night in the desert. That's what they say. It made it to my number one. I fell in love with it, honestly. When it opens up, it's just okay. Like, you feel like right now, I'm not really feeling it. But as it settles, like within half an hour, it's kind of got a sweet yet warm, yet it has a kind of like it's a unisex. But I feel it works well with men, but I could see, it would be strong and loud for women, but I feel that, yeah, women could wear it as well. I don't feel it's something that's very clearly masculine in that sense, but it's designed as unisex, but it has made it to my number one, people, to my number one. So let me present to you, this is currently my perfume list that you can see right there. Number 1, 2, 3, you've got Oud, that's by Tiziana Terenzi, Oud Tarafa, along with Creed Aventus and Damali's Layton. They are all in my number one, people. And you've got Tom Ford Ombre Leather in 2, and now Grey Vetiver. I have just been, you know what? Wow, it really it impressed me. Number 3 is still YSL Tuxedo and Oud Wood, people. That's what I'm talking about. I thought I'd share some of those with you. On a side note, I was so wowed by Tiziana Terenzi that I thought, what else do they have? So I ended up ordering fragrance like samples of almost all that I could get hold of their other fragrances. And to be honest with you, I've been disappointed with all of them so far. I think 1 or 2 are still to arrive. At least 3 have arrived. Absolutely, I was like, never would I wear that. But this is an epic kind of choice. Something very, it's got that, it's a very oriental yet woody fragrance. Okay, so, and it has almost, as it opens up, that kind of what you'd expect like within that Muslim vibe. But it goes on to just become so rich. Definitely, people. Vanilla. I feel it's got a vanilla-ish kind of touch in there, but that might be the caramel coming through. But yeah, cool, people, mixed with the leather. Right, so let's move back to your questions. You're doing it, people. So, what is going on, mi gente? What is going on? What else do... Oh, people, picking on your... Check this out, people. I came across this, speaking of how the mind influences what we think and how we process information. Inaya asked an interesting question. Is it haram to harvest oud? The tree is tortured when injected with fungus by the farmers in order for the tree to produce the substance. I didn't know about how it's about the torturing. I don't... I think it's permissible. I don't like the sound of trees being tortured, but I'm not so sure. I'll look into that, actually. I don't really know about trees being tortured. But shukran for the question. I'll definitely look into it. Right, so speaking of how our psyche influences our perception and processes information, check this out, people. Which word are you hearing? And depending on the word you read is what you will hear. It's amazing. So one says brainstorm, one says green needle. Now, if you don't believe me, this time when he's pointing at that word, I want you to try and look at the other word instead. Look at the opposite. Now look at the opposite. Green needle. And if you think I've made that up, I'm going to put it again and you choose it at random. Okay, you choose it at random. Whichever one you want. Oh, people, see, that is the effect of the mind, people. How powerful the brain is. Wow, I just found that. I thought I had to share that with you guys. Yeah, so that's what's going down, man. That's what's going down, peoples. That's what's going down. Right. Peoples, is it haram to extract sperm? Huh?
Oh my God!
Is it haram to extract? I think in this case, it's a bit late, actually. It should have...
Now wait.
It should have been extracted. Right, so is it haram to extract sperm from... right, he's run off with the... There it is. From animals, if you have to give them... What? If you have to give them handjobs? Behead this one, you, harami. Right, so... Well, I suppose somebody's got to extract it, isn't it? And, you know, there's an interesting question on sperm donation, and what do we think about that? And I'll have to do a detailed video in the future, because I won't do it justice now. But I do feel that there is permissibility, there is grounds for... I don't mean just for sperm donation, that's obvious, but I mean for people, women who are struggling to, let's say they're not in a relationship, and they want to have a child. Can they just go and get a sperm donation and just have a child? Especially if they fear that there's no, you know, that their biological clock is ticking and they're running out of time. I would say as a rukhsa, I'm not saying that that's the default position to do something like that, because I think that obviously has a lot of other complications in the future as well. The child wanting to know who the father is and stuff like this are very important, because the place of a father in the child's mind will always be, you know, it will be of unfathomable importance. But that said, if it got to a point, or let's say there's a couple where they know, but the father is infertile. Now, can they just, but they want to have a child? Like, can they just, and in this case, you've got the husband and wife. Can they just like use some donated sperm? I would feel that there would be grounds for permissibility to do that. And I'll have to do a detailed, obviously, explanation on that in the future. But I feel that, look, there are certain things, you know, this view that people say, oh, just, you know, just suck it up. Don't worry. Just, you know, don't worry. This life is finite anyway, and you're going to die anyway. Well, that's hardly, that's hardly any solace, is it? To, you know, if you think about it, what the hell is that? How is that going to answer really any problems for these people? People, it's a huge suffering in life to not be able to have a child for you know, for people who don't have any children, and to kind of dismiss it by just saying, well, you know, this is what God has chosen for you. Well, how do you know God has chosen that? How do you know? It could be that you, you know, that you do this and then you realize, well, actually, God had chosen, you know, for me to have a child through this means. How do you know? And I just feel that it's so easily dismissed by the clergy. And, you know, the things that they say that, oh, well, this will mean another man's sperm has been in her womb. And you think, all right, calm down, mate. In all honesty, I feel that, look, there's such a kind of double standard to all this, because when you say all this, oh my God, the sanctity of the womb and all this thing, but in all honesty, come on, you allowed having sex with slaves, and you allowed all of this, and you allow वहां पे sanctity कहाँ जाती है? This is all not nice, my friend. Acha, sanctity, acha. And so over there, the sanctity, so this is the problem, that we don't have a lens of compassion. We only have a lens of power that is applied when legislating Islamic rulings. So it's done from a power perspective. So obviously, when the clergy have decided, because it benefits them, they will say, fine, yeah, you can have sex here, you can do this, you can do that, you can. Oh, a woman being able to, no, that toba. That will mean another man's sperm in her womb. And you think, well, calm down, mate. I know the way you're dramatizing it, but we're not saying she's going to some kind of an orgy. We're saying that, look, this is a technical process by which, obviously, the technology now exists. In the past, it didn't exist like this. Now, you could say, well, yeah, true. Well, in the past, they could ask a man to donate his sperm, and they could kind of, like, using whatever their best means possible, inject it into her, her vagina to impregnate her. And that's true, since in the past, people actually did that as well in a weird way. Like, a lot of the slave girls would actually try to capture the sperm to impregnate themselves later on. So, and they would do that because once they were impregnated, they automatically just bought their freedom and they made their way out. So it changed their whole status as well. They became Walad. So there's many things where they discuss that in the fiqh books, that when the guy would pull out, but she would say, अच्छा, pull out कर रहे थे आप. Responsibility se pull out. It's like, maybe you pull out, but not from responsibility you pull out. So before you know it, he would be like, huh? Pregnant? ये क्या हो रहा है? So this, so although that did exist, and people could say, well, in the past, people could have done things like that as well. They could have. That's true, and they didn't. They didn't kind of donate sperm like that. But there was a social, there was a very kind of sexual embarrassment involved with it. And what modern technology has done is it's kind of turned the procedure entirely surgical. So it's removed that kind of the human, social, intimate, sexual, sensual, all of that side from it. Because even in the past, if they were to say, to a guy, oh, would you mind, there you go, mate, could you kind of like, could you fill that up, please? It's like, oh, damn, is this, yaar wo, Tara said, I can't seem to smell, koi aur fragrance hai yaar. But you see, there was a sexual side to it, like you're telling him to go and masturbate and do this, and this also held a kind of embarrassment in society, and it held a kind of and remember, there's, in many cases, it's still very it wasn't, the likelihood was, even though it's still possible, but it was reduced drastically, because obviously he'd have to, unless he was actually having sex, for him to, and then get that cup to her, and then she's to try and pour it through. And it's possible it could still cause pregnancy, but not the way it's done today with all this technology. This whole side, the stigma and everything, has been unquestionably removed. It is not even in the picture. And that was a huge part. And then people would say, yes, but there was the nasab, the lineage that goes back to the father. And I would agree, but except in this day and age, you see, and I've got a clip on this as well already, that lineage doesn't play that kind of a role anymore in society. It is important, unquestionably, but it's not the way it was in the time of 7th century Arabia for the Arabs. For them, lineage was everything. It was worth living and dying over. It was everything, it was. Today, most Muslims in many parts of the world don't even know their lineage beyond their grandparents. That's like the norm. The norm in like Pakistan is they wouldn't know. Like they wouldn't know their great grandfather's name. By and large, maybe many do, but I would say most people probably don't. Their great grandparents, they don't know like all their great grandparents' names, for example, let alone great great grandparents. I actually do. But most people don't. So, yeah, so I feel that there is grounds for all of this. Cool. And Mufti, why did the slave girls only cover from navel to knee? Does the eradication of slavery remove the necessity of hijab? Right. I'm not so sure whether they... I don't think the slave girls covered from navel to knee. I think they did generally cover, but they didn't cover as well. So you have to remember back then the kind of dressing that people wore, like they just wore like a kind of like almost like a thobe, kind of like a nightie kind of dress, like that, I guess. And the way they just had it was just a slit over here. They just fit the head through it, and so that would often show a certain amount of cleavage. And especially if a woman's working and she's moving around, and they would be kind of like, and their dress thing would be kind of lifted and tied up. So because obviously if it's right down to the leg, you can't move around freely, can you? Especially if you're so the lower part of the leg, like let's say the shin part, would often be exposed when they're working, as would the arms. They would kind of maybe be exposed. The upper chest may be exposed. So it was like that. I don't think they just sat there bare-breasted, because I don't that just not. I don't buy that, honestly. I don't buy that, because that would just be that would be a great a great place to be at that time, but I don't think the societies would function like that. So yeah, but this is why, to justify it, the scholars said, well, okay, that's not the aura then. What is it that they always do cover? Well, they cover definitely, from the navel to the knee, and they just came up with that. But this is a fine example of where the double standards come up. Where they ask some women you have to cover everything, including the face. And you've got some women that it doesn't matter. They're not covered at all. And this is the kind of hypocrisy that I find, and other scholars found this as well. Ibn Hazm has a huge go at the scholars for this. That, what are you on about? And I feel that those men that go on about women must cover the face and they must do this but they're the same people that will advocate in the books that, but if they were slave women, they wouldn't need to cover it at all. And you think, but where is this? This doesn't sound, what you're saying doesn't sound divine. It just sounds like the politics of men, which is all it is, really, in my understanding. Yeah, and so I feel that, so I'm saying that in essence, this really it's really meant to extend to all women. It was simply just a ruling of modesty. And then there was a dispensation beyond some aspects, like if the need was, then okay. That's how I see it. East London Munda says, Mufti, can I buy a Chinese girl from eBay? And Zeba deleted it. You're doing it, Zeba G. You're doing it. See, he deserved to have that deleted. Can I buy a girl from eBay? And then, I East London Munda. But shukran for the super chat anyway. I'll use that on my. Let's go to eBay. Yeah, what's on eBay? Is there? Right. So you're doing it, people. Huh? This one, not nice, my friend. Yeah. But that day and age, huh? The slavery, the kidnappings, the abduction, the rasail al-mutalammis. Risalat al-mutalammisi. Allah, people. Let me tell you a little story, people. Huh? So, those of you that may have heard of this term, those of you that study Arabic, Risalat al-mutalammis. Risalat al-mutalammis is, in Arabic, it's a term used for when somebody comes to his own destruction. Like he comes carrying, like basically he's coming to his own death. And it was often a term used that certain rulers or people in power would do when they wanted to execute someone, but they didn't want to execute them just for political reasons or whatever. So what they would do is give them a sealed letter, and it's got the royal kind of seal on there, and they would send them off to a different governor or a different ruler. And what it would do is when they open it would say, إِذَا جَاءَكَ حَامِلُ هَذَا فَاقْتُلْهُ. Or, if the person carrying this brings this to you, then kill him. So you'd be like, अच्छा अच्छा आप आए हैं बैठिए हुजूर मैं अभी आता हूँ. So this, and so the person, the governor, would then just kill him. This was also, for example, the alleged thing to do. They claimed Uthman had sent for Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr, Abu Bakr's son, allegedly, but he hadn't sent it. But this is what caused the pretext that, okay, who sent it then? Because they apparently intercept this messenger who has this thing that when he comes to you, kill him. So this, they get this from the term, they call this Risalat al-Mutalammis. And this story goes back to a person called Mutalammis. And let me tell you a bit about this story. You've probably heard of the Mu'allaqat. I don't think I've got it here anywhere. The Arabic, great Arabic poems that were used to be framed allegedly on the Kaaba. So now, amongst them was Tarafa ibn al-Abd. Right now, he was one of them who has his amazing mu'allaqa as well. The famous one that even the Prophet would quote. And sometimes I tell you something on a side note. It's ridiculous how Muslims will go just to kind of prove a point that they, unknowingly disrespect. I feel it's disrespectful to the Prophet. But they feel, oh, mashallah, mashallah. See, the Prophet would quote this poem. This is from Jahiliyyah time. In fact, I believe he may have just been in line with when the Prophet was born and a young person, but he's around that time anyway. He's from the generation just before the Prophet, though. So he lived in Hira, the capital, the cultural capital of the Arabs, which would be in modern day Iraq, and where the Nabatean script comes from, by the way, into Mecca. Why we have this Arabic we have today? It's actually the Nabatean script, but it comes via Hira. Abu Sufyan kind of imports it. So this, so his poem with the famous line, "Satubdi laka al-ayyamu ma kunta jahilan, wa ya'tika bil akhbari man lam tuzawwidi." Allah, that if you do not know the days, that time will teach you, and such a person will come to explain to you who you did not prepare. Like meaning that, if you're ignorant, then life will teach you. Allah. And the Prophet even would quote this poem. And then people, to prove a point, they say, oh, by the way, when the Prophet would quote it, he would get the wasn't wrong. There wasn't the scale. The Prophet, when he would quote it, he would get the scale wrong. And they say this kind of trying to be like, mashallah, because the Prophet wasn't a poet. And you think, look, all right, calm down, love. It's like, what the hell is wrong with you guys? Stop trying to infantilize the Prophet. Of course, why would the Prophet get that wrong? Cha, you can all get it right and the Prophet can't get it right. ستبدي لك الأيام ما كنت جاهلا ويأتيك بالأخبار من لم تزود. Oh no, he would get it wrong. I find this stuff disrespectful towards the Prophet just because you want to prove your point that, the Prophet wasn't a poet. You see, it doesn't mean that you weren't a sha'ir, one of those. And sha'ir didn't mean somebody who could simply just say poetry. It meant those kind of people, the shamans. But anyway, that's a different topic. But coming back to here, this Tarafa ibn al-Abd. Now, he was somebody that was a famous poet, lived in Hira. And the king of his time was what's his name? Right. It was Ibn Hind. They call him Ibn Hind, but I believe it was Ibn al-Munzir. Nu'man ibn al-Munzir, I believe, was the king of his time. But anyway, he was known, Tarafa, for if he satirized, took the mick out of someone, if he mocked them in a poem, that was their social media. That person was named and shamed. Everybody would learn the poem, and so people feared his hijab. They called it hijab. And this one time, apparently, because he himself, just to give you a bit about him, that he had a rough upbringing, and he kind of his own cousin, his uncles, kind of, because his father died when he was young, they kind of, for his money, just were a bit cruel to him and his mum. So he kind of, when he did grow older, he spent a life. He spent his life in indulgence and luxury and just kind of alcohol and women and that kind of stuff. But then he did have a reputation because of his poetry, and he was a fighter as well. He was a warrior. So he apparently says some poem, hijab, mocking the king. So when the king finds out, he's like, Allah, putar. And so he sets out to kill him, but he doesn't just, he thinks like, if I do it, these people have said some poems that it's going to go viral. You know what? I'm going to send him to Bahrain, and the king there will kill him. So he sends him and his uncle, whose name is Mutalammis, sends them with these letters. He says, hey, I got something for you in Bahrain. And these guys, Tarafa, his asal, his origin was from Bahrain. So he's like, all right, awesome. So they go there. They think it's some kind of a post and they're going to get money and patronage. And little do they know that they are carrying their own destruction. Right. So what happens is, along the way, Mutalammis says, I wonder what's in this letter. He opens it up, but he can't read. So they get hold of some servant or some person that could read, and they say, what does it say? So that guy says, who is Mutalammis? And he says, oh, it's me. He says, well, according to this, when you get there, he's asking the king to kill Mutalammis. So Mutalammis is like, what the hell? So he legs it. He says, and he tells his nephew is Tarafa. And he tells Tarafa, look, your letter is going to have the same thing. And Tarafa's like, nah, the king wouldn't do that to me. And he's saying, look, I'm telling you, let's leg it. Do not, like, I'm out of here. And like that, he's gone. He disappears. Tarafa says, nah, I'm true to my word. The king wouldn't do that to me. I don't believe that. He has too much respect for me and blah, blah, blah. So he turns up to this ruler of Bahrain. And lo and behold, people, that's exactly what the letter had. So the letter is like, kill him. So he's like, well, look, I ain't gonna do it because I know his family, that tribe. He's from, I believe he was from, was it Taghlib? Was it Taghlib or Bakar? But he's from one of those kind of tribes. And they're kind of like sister tribes in that sense. And so he says, look, the ruler writes back to the king saying, look, I ain't gonna kill him. If you want to kill him, send someone else to kill him. I ain't gonna do it. So he says, all right, he sends someone else. He'll go and do it. And so meanwhile, Tarafa is imprisoned. So, and he's had this life of suffering, you know, this whole thing where his own uncles kind of tortured him, tormented him. They tormented his mom. They, all this for the inheritance, that because there was a certain amount of money left to them. And he's the one, there's a famous poem in Arabic, وَظُلْمُ ذَوِي الْقُرْبَى أَشَدُّ مَضَاضَةً عَلَى الْمَرْعِ مِنْ وَقْعِ الْحُسَامِ الْمُهَنَّةِ. Allah. And that's from his mu'allaqa, that way he says that, the oppression from your own relatives is much harsher upon a man than being struck down by a ruthless sword. So that famous poem, so he's locked up in prison, Tarafa is, during these days while somebody else is coming to kill him. And there he says this poem. He says, أسلمني قومي ولم يغضبوا لسوءة حلت بهم فاتحة. That he says, my own people surrendered me, because he had called out for help when he's now in Bahrain. When he said some kind of poem like calling out that, are you guys going to let this happen? Yeah, Bakr. I think it was Bakr he was from. So he says, are you going to let this happen? And nobody's kind of really come to his to his aid. So he says, كل خليل كنت خاللته لا فلا ترك الله له واضحا. That, every friend and companion who I had has kind of betrayed him, he feels. So may Allah, may they just be, to hell with them. That's كلهم. Right, what's this opened here? It says كلهم أروغ من ثعلب فما أشبه الليلة بالبارحة. Allah. He says all of them are like, in their dealings, they're as more conniving than a fox. Because this kind of this mathal, this proverb of foxes being conniving. And he says, ما أشبه الليلة بالبارحة. And this part became a proverb in Arabic, that today, that how similar is tonight with yesterday night. Meaning that, for so long, really, they've always just been snakes to him. But this part in Arabic is a proverb, ما أشبه الليلة بالبارحة. That what is, and this poem of his, أسلمني قومي ولم يغضبوا, that they did not, لسوءة حلت بهم فادحة, that كل خليل كنت خاللته فلا ترك الله لهم واضحا كلهم أروغ من ثعلب ما أشبه الليلة بالبارحة. That this poem of his, and he was then eventually killed. Yeah, and the thing is that when the guy came to kill him, he asks him that, how would you like to be killed? Allah. Allah, that yamunnuna alayka and aslamu. The favor they do to you, that the favor is, how would you like to be killed? So it's amazing that he says that, he says in kana la bud, he says if you must, then he says, then let me get drunk and let me just allow me to bleed out. So that's what they actually do. So they allow, they let him drink, and then they just kind of like cut his thing and allow him to just bleed out. And he dies, and a proper tragedy, actually. And he's somebody that was known for his... because he had a chance to get away, but he says that if I ran, then what would be an example of... Because, you know, he says, I'm the kind of person that if they ask of me, I will always be there, that I'm not going to be intimidated. And it's amazing. And these were the kind of heroes or and the kind of figures in which, around whose stories the backdrop, it created the backdrop in which the Prophet and other Arabs grew up. So these were the kind of stories that they grew up around, and these poems, ma ashbah al-laylata bil-bariha, this kind of stuff. I thought I'd share that with you guys. Guys, it's we got to really wrap this up. Did I study abroad and did I go on my own? I did go on my own as well. I did kind of create a little group when I first went. Got them all to go as well. But I was only 18 then. But ever since I came back from Damascus, I continued to go for many years. I studied, just on my own. Right, so people, let's wrap this up. So there's a clip, basically. We're going to... there's two things. First of all, I came across this. This is an interesting, just a brief thing by Sheikh Atabek. And I'm curious about this. Sheikh Atabek saying, we've had our mediation to settle the case against Suleiman Ahmed. He's made an offer for dropping the case, but it will be going ahead to court. Sheikh Atabek will be taking it ahead because that's apparently he's been set up and he's had his things. So that's a bit of just a little tantalizing. We'll have to wait for that. The other part is we've had this clip where...
Mufti, can guys wear chains? Asking for myself.
This chain, people.
For men to wear chains because it imitates women. It imitates sinners.
This chain, this one not nice, my friend. So what you can see is, I was sent this video, Mufti Wasim. I personally do like Mufti Wasim on certain, but these kind of teachings are what is dumbing down our, and I'm just going to play the clip again, our ummah that you get. This is being asked that can we wear chains? And he says that no, you can't. And then he goes on to give the justification that why, because it obviously, one, it's similar to what women wear, and two, I believe that's what he says about women, but we'll hear that in a moment. And he says, but more importantly, resembles this chain, this chain, it resembles the people of the hellfire.
Stupid, I'm not going to let you get the chain.
So the people of the hellfire are going to be in chains. So we can't wear chains because the people of hellfire are going to be in chains. So let's hear this, people.
Yo, Mufti, can guys wear chains? Asking for myself.
It's not allowed for men to wear chains because it imitates women. It imitates sinners. And also, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes the people of hell, he says they have chains around their necks. So if you can't look like the people of Jannah, then don't look like the people of Jahannam.
Chain! So honestly, I came across... I was like, this is mere dil ke chain, people. This is clearly the people of hell. This is clearly what Mufti Saab is doing to... This is clearly what Mufti Saab here is doing to the chain. Oh, mere dil ke chain. Look, let me be clear. What's not the concept of hell? What it's not. Okay, the concept of hell is not that, oh, when you go there, Allah gives you all this jewelry and you just sit down and you just go, Oh, bro, what are you doing here? MashaAllah, you've got a solid, medallion there. What were you doing? It's like, whoa, he's wearing platinum. He's wearing platinum. He must have definitely been up to some. And you got the Pharaoh there in all his multiple chains. This is definitely not the concept of hell. Okay, so trying to say, well, resembling the people of hell by wearing jewelry. Acha. That's not, where it says the metaphor of people being dragged and these things, salsal, silsilatin, fiya salasil, and these kind of silsila, these links that are dragging people, because the links were the kind of metaphor that was being given were people that were, let's say, at the end of a war, and they had rounded people up and they had dragged them and things like that. People used to do this in that there was this backdrop and they were in chains, this kind of like, and they being kind of like pulled along, and this kind of imagery was in the imagination of the Arabs. And this is being played on in saying, well, people being kind of like dragged in these, they're being taken away to their peril, to their destruction. Obviously, I mean, I don't believe that's literal anyway. These are just metaphors and symbolism, but that's playing on that imagination of the Arabs, who had this understanding from the Greeks, how they did it, the Persians did it, how they kind of dragged all these thousands of people away in chains. And this is where the Quranic or the Islamic literature, where it mentioned people in these links and chains of being taken away to hell. Not that, oh, mashallah, they're being given necklaces. Acha, mashallah. Acha kaam kiye hain. Acha, kufr kiye hain. Acha. Yaar, mashallah. Aarti utare. Let's give them this. Let's give them another golden chain. And yaar, this one only 18 carats, no. These are not nice. So this is the dumb, honestly, the total dumb thing.
Asking for myself.
It's not allowed for men to wear chains because it imitates women.
Women, mashallah.
And also, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes the people of hell, He says they have chains around their necks. So if you can't look like the people of Jannah, then don't look like the people of Jahannam.
Oh. This is honestly, yaar, ye chain kahan se milega hame yaar? This is the most stupidest thing I've ever heard. Oh, if you wear a chain, it resembles women. Acha. And what about bracelets and bangles? What about, I'm just saying, and then they're going to say, well, obviously that but doesn't Allah say in the Quran that people in Jannah will have asawir min dhahab? They're going to have all these bracelets from gold. And you say, well, oh, but that's in Jannah. Say, cha. So what was the Prophet giving glad tidings to Suraqa about? That, oh, give him glad tidings that when he will be made to wear the bracelets of Kisra. Why was, cha, the Prophet was giving glad tidings about something haram. And what about braiding your hair? Doesn't that resemble women braiding their hair? Did not the companions, at least 20 to 30 companions, Shawkani brings, used to have as their general style that they would have braided hairs? I mean, the braided hairstyle. What about the kuhl, the eyeliner? The kind of surma, the kuhl that the Arabs wore? Is that not, come on, like today, which resembles women more? If I sat here with eyeliner on, or if I had this, like, I mean, come on, like if I'm sitting here with like eyeliner and I'm like, I'm like,
all those hijabi tutorial girls who be misguiding my sisters.
I'm like,
teaching them
this guy on the left.
To be insecure in the hijab.
I'm like,
Do you understand what you've done? You made our women feel...
I'm like, and then I'm wearing a thobe which is like a frock. I mean, come on. Wearing a thobe which is like a frock. Does that not resemble women? In this day and age, come on. Walking around in like a frock. And I'm just saying, if you're going to say, well, this resembles, by wearing a chain around your neck, all of a sudden you resemble a woman. I mean, like, yaar, Maulvi Sahab, Mufti Sahab, आप कौन सी दुनिया में रहते हैं आप? By wearing a chain, you resemble women. And then you resemble the people of hellfire. Acha, acha, acha. And the frock you're wearing, this one not resemble, you know, this one. Naughty. So, this is the kind of absurdity that we have. And then this, and this is how we can tell who's a man and who's a woman. Oh, it's through the, they're worse than... Oh, it's clearly just through the jewelry they're wearing. Obviously, we couldn't tell otherwise. Why do you think the Qari Sahib has such difficulty distinguishing? Qari Sahib's like, yaar, ye kya galti kiye hain hum? This is just the dumbest thing.
Stupid. I'm not going to let you get the chance.
So people, I had to comment on that. That's just so ridiculous. And the hellfire thing was as dumb as it gets. I mean, it just doesn't get any dumber. Oh, god damn. Well, people, I hope that's all good. I'm going to wrap this up. Guys, if there's any issues, do feel free to reach out. If there's anything, I didn't leave anything out, did I? Nope. Right, so do reach out to me. Oh, by the way, I've launched my Patreon, people. My Patreon. No, it's not that. Is it this? No, it's not that. Is it this? All right, people. I'm gonna, this, my Hall of Fame. I'll have my patrons' names on that in the coming sessions. So, guys, I'm on Patreon now. So, those of you that are feeling it, that want to be Miss Patrones, all right, my patrons, you can head over there. I've got different tiers. There is something like it's a Telegram group, a chat group. That's on one of the tiers. There's things like a group sessions once a month that are being offered, like on Zoom. And there's also a one-to-one, the one-to-one. So, and those of you, my patrons, a big shout out to you. Zevaji Shukran. Zeva, obviously, from our major patrons. Damat Barakatuh al-Aliyah. But there, she's shared the link in the WhatsApp chat. Do check that out, people. Feel free to like, to subscribe, to support. Kar lo yaar, jo kuch bhi karna hai. And I will set up on YouTube as well, but there are all the different things there. Other than that, if you've got any issues, reach out to me. Eid is coming up. I know it doesn't feel like it, but it is coming up. Very early Eid Mubarak to all of you. It's really just about the day. Just relax. Don't worry, we don't have to. There's nothing, there isn't a Hajj this year anyway, so relax. And just enjoy. Yeah, that's all it is. Eat some interesting food. Kick back, watch something, maybe learn something, laugh a little, people. That's really all that life is about. Don't you think? In the end, that's all it'll kind of amount to. So till then, people, what will I give you for Eid? Eid chahe, acha. Chalo, I'll have to think of something. Take very good care of yourselves, people. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. I'm bringing up my final page. Do like, subscribe. If you haven't clicked the notification on YouTube, then what the hell are you waiting for? A risalatul mutalammis. Do I have to send you out with one of those targets? People, this is the page. Check it out. Do like, do subscribe. The only one, I haven't added Patreon to it, the logo yet, but do like it. Salihah, you're doing it. Like, spread the love, people. Over and out. Wassalamu alaikum و خدا حافظ.